Hi everyone, welcome to our Digging Deeper session for this week. Terry's away, so I promised him I'd share a little something from the sermon with you. Fortunately, I paid attention, so I'm going to just take a little aspect of the sermon that I think really gripped me and I think is worth exploring in your groups and thinking through yourself. And that aspect is what next? After I've asked God for forgiveness, the question often that sits before us is, do I have to make restitution somehow to others that I've harmed in the process? So I want to talk for a minute just about that. In the story we had heard in church, it was fairly cut and dried. David sent one of his generals on the battlefield with the intent of leaving him exposed to be killed so he could take that general's wife, committed sexual sin with Bathsheba, and then was contrite and went before God, Psalm 51, if you'd like to read about that experience. Now, in David's case, it was not just a thing between him and God. It was a thing between him and Bathsheba's husband, Uriah. It was a thing between him and Bathsheba, adultery. It was a thing that resulted in family strains, and actually later on in his life too, you'll notice that there were still elements of that, relationship strains and family problems. So put yourself in a situation where you do something, and it's not just that you sinned against God, it's that you also have hurt people in the process. What would I say? Let's say somebody came up to me and said, now what would you do, James? What would you recommend I do? Because I've done this, I want to make it right. How do I go about that? And there's several things I think that are worth thinking through at that point, or worth practicing, worth maybe taking into consideration. The first one is, I would definitely, before you rush out and do anything, I would stop and I would pray. And I think it's in prayer that you'll start to sense God's presence with you. More than that, I would make sure that I prayed Scripture, that I would look through, especially the Psalms. They offer some input on how to manage feelings and some situations, but I'd also give thought to whether there are general principles in the Scriptures that would help us better understand what a next step might look like. And then the third thing, which I'd highly recommend you do, especially if it's something that can be fairly sensitive, is I would seek out the counsel of someone you deeply trust spiritually. I would sit down with them and I would explain to them. For some people it might be a Christian counselor even. Often it doesn't have to be somebody who's credentialed as a psychologist or a psychotherapist. It could be someone who's just really skilled and understands Scripture, understands the human nature, understands how to go about creating bridges between a broken past, between you and another person or more people. And I would suggest that you sit down with a person like that and you wade through the possibilities that exist before you. That's hard. When Terry mentioned on Sunday that it wasn't just over when I confessed it to God, but maybe there were still some steps left, I was challenged by that. I'm sure a number of you are challenged by that. We'd probably all like to know, well, what am I now to do? I would say pray through Scripture, seek the input of a valued counselor, somebody you trust, somebody you see as spiritually thorough, but also has a good sense of how people are motivated and has experience in dealing with others, and then try to patiently take a next step. That's what I have for you today. I hope that's valuable. I think there's more to it. You can unpack that more as groups, and we have some questions too that'll be sent out to your group leaders. That's all for now. Thanks.